I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. So let's do this. Let's do this because I know we were going to bring it up anyway, but let's do this. Let me read from you, read to you a portion of a message I got on Instagram. And I hope this person reaches back out again because I actually really appreciated what I think they were saying or what was, So anyway, the message says here, greetings, Dr. Ball, reaching out after watching your most recent episode of I Mix What I Like, read Dave Chappelle. I'm an evolutionary biologist, population geneticist, biological anthropologist, and sociologist who is also a queer Black trans man and an Nkrumah terrorist. My research focuses primarily on race, racism, human biology, genetics, and health, but Euro-colonial binary gender and sex are topics I also study because, quite frankly, my life depends on it. I've been producing political education tools on my website for the last 8 years, and the website is decolonizallthings.com for the last 8 years, and through my social media accounts. And if and or when you get a chance, I'm open to have some discussions about making these conversations more fruitful and point people to some educational resources. So I wrote back pretty quickly within a couple of hours and said, hell yeah, thanks for reaching out. If you have any issues with what I said, let me know and feel free to join my show Monday even, because this was on Friday, to talk more. In the meantime, I'll check out your work, which I have at least a little bit, although I haven't gotten too far into it. There's a lot that's over my head in terms of the subject matter and the science. But I didn't see anything specific to this issue. But I hope that this person reaches back out and will come on because I think they represent a fantastic and very interesting combination, not only for this topic, but and yes, Black trans man piece, queer Black trans man piece is important and a part of the identity, obviously, for this conversation in particular. But I was like, but of course, saying as self-defining as an Nkrumah terrorist, I was like, wow. Now I definitely, because my point was, and as I said to my the new crew at I Mix What I Like, I'm interested in Black radical critiques or responses or criticism of me. So again, part of my biggest problem with what the popular discussion of Chappelle is that so much of it seems to be emanating from a very white and liberal political space, and I'm less interested in that criticism or wing of the discussion. So I hope this person reaches back out and will come back on, or at least privately engage, because that's fantastic. So it was in that context that I was, very happy to re-engage this conversation with Chappelle. And of course, because you, my dear colleague, are not only a colleague and comrade, but also have expressed some views, and I think a disagreement with me and others. But so anyway, I wanted to, so that was the context for me. So I'm happy to re-engage and or to talk a little bit more, and to as was said here in their own way, but as others have pointed out to me in a at least a less cis het way.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I have been watching the discourse around the special, and look, I have been a Chappelle fan from back in the Chappelle show days. Um and number one, I will say that I just didn't think this show was funny. I just didn't think the jokes were funny. Just taking away the controversy around them. I just didn't think it was his funniest stuff. I didn't think the last one was his funniest stuff. I think he has been not funny as he has been for a while. And that's and I mean I understand that's subjective. But I feel like also the critique I've seen of this last special kind of glossed over the class politics of some of the things he said, which I think are extremely important. Um, Now, one thing that somebody said in another, and I think it was on the show My Day Job by Any Means Necessary, where Sean Blackman and I talked about it. And we found out some things from a listener of the show about how Chappelle is like buying up land in wherever the Yellow Springs, Ohio, where he is, and
Mhm.
driving up the property values, and pretty much is
Mm.
like the driver of gentrification in Yellow Springs. So
Wow.
when we had the conversation, like
Wow.
briefly, yeah, it's like, and people were like legit arguing in the chats. Well, Dave Chappelle is not a capitalist. Yes, he is, and it's just wild. But one of the things that we talked about was the fact that Chappelle made a comment in that show where he said, first of all, he misrepresented, I think, the Me Too movement. And people, all people who do this get on my nerves because they act as if these white women in Hollywood were the ones who created the Me Too movement. And
Mhm.
the Me Too movement was only about, lecherous white men in Hollywood. It was not. The hashtag, the movement was created by Tarana Burke, and she never gets the credit that she deserves. And it's disturbing when black folks do that. Yes, it's true that white women in Hollywood co-opted it as the as powerful white women are wont to do with every fucking social movement. That's what they do. But it is our responsibility to be clear on the origins of social movements, especially when they come from our folks. And he did not do that. And that was very disturbing to me that he kept it in the narrow confines of the people who co-opted the movement put it. So that was a problem for me. But then he said, if these white women in Hollywood were serious, they would have they would have fired their agents and gotten this sister from the mailroom and
Mm.
told everybody that if they wanted to get to me, you have to go through her, and then everybody would have come up. That completely dismissed the issue of addressing sexual assault, sexual harassment, and rape in the workplace, even in the confines of Hollywood. And it presented it as, well, this is how everybody can come up. We're not talking about come up in the context of the Me Too movement. We're not talking about everybody getting put on. We're talking about dealing with people who sexually harass and rape women and men in many cases. That's so I felt like that was just a really weird kind of almost like a capitalist spin on how you solve a problem. Everybody comes up, but the people who are actually doing the abusing and the sexual assaulting, they don't get addressed because his answer was, and that's how people don't get fed to people like Harvey Weinstein. Well, that's also not true because again, this wasn't just about Hollywood. This was about sexual harassment in the workplace and everywhere that wasn't being addressed, that women were not being listened to.
Hold
So
on, Jackie. Hold on. Wait. I'm not sure I'm understanding. Let me be because I may have missed or okay. Because when I heard that joke, I thought he was making the point that if you make it just about diversity in hiring, then you do feed people to the Weinsteins and don't address the actual problem of the Weinsteins. But you're saying so. But you're saying that he didn't. He was saying something else. So say that part again. I'm not clear on that because I wasn't clear when he said made that joke.
so I felt like he was saying that, in the narrow confines of um hard, sexual harassment in Hollywood, that this would be solved if all these women had fired their agents and had this person that nobody knows, working in the mailroom, as their representative, and then nobody gets fed to Harvey Weinstein. And
Oh,
I, you see what I mean? And I
yeah,
felt like, number one, again, because I was thinking, well, okay, Me Too was about more than just Hollywood and Harvey Weinstein. And also, that doesn't address the problem of what do you do with the Harvey Weinsteins. It doesn't address directly, dealing with the people who are committing the assault. You're putting all of the onus on the people who are being assaulted and telling them what they should do, but you're not confronting the people who are dealing with who are doing the actual assaulting. And I felt like also, because what he said was, if I'm remembering correctly, then everybody comes up, the girl in the mailroom comes up, you come up,
right.
and nobody gets fed to Harvey Weinstein. It's like,
No,
well, to me that's a very capitalist response to dealing with, injustice. Just give people more opportunity and more money, and then the problem goes away. Well, that's not how that works. That's not, and in the words of Dave Chappelle, that's not how that works. You know what I'm
no,
saying?
that's a
So
legit. All of that is legit, including the land buying piece that I have not. I'm not
yeah,
aware of. And again, but just to clarify, my defense of Chappelle was not over his being a radical or his having offered up an actual analysis and solution. It was only specific around this issue of I don't think I didn't take what he was doing as being hostile or antagonistic to the trans community, or certainly trying to erase Black trans. I took what he was
well,
doing as trying to say, I don't want white folks claiming a new identity that then allows them to claim the oppression on parallel with an entire Black community, which includes Black trans people. But what you're raising here, I see. That's the point. Like, I have not heard. I don't see this as part of the popular argument against Chappelle or debate about
right,
Chappelle.
right.
So that's why I'm saying this is much more of interest to me, and that's a really good point. I and to that point on the Weinstein joke, I think that's right. I mean, he's not offering up a radical. And look, others have pointed out too, like his whole, we got to give Trump a chance, and we got
I
to,
mean,
all of those things. And
right,
even the older humor on the Chappelle show, which I admittedly love, is not necessarily politically appropriate, or it
right.
doesn't always age well with time. But I don't agree that I just don't agree that he is some hostile enemy that should be canceled, or even that was himself defending his own potential cancellation. I didn't get that part either. But anyway, that what you're raising is
Well, I mean, I feel
fantastic.
like,
It's right.
I feel like people are like getting weirdly personal with this dude that none of us know, as far as I know. I don't know Dave Chappelle, and I don't care that I don't know him. So, my opinion on Dave Chappelle honestly shouldn't. It's like, okay, this is what I see from his comedy, and people shouldn't take this as, like, oh my God, Jackie's trying to cancel Dave Chappelle. I can't cancel that $60 million check that dude is getting. Are you serious? Are y'all fucking serious with this foolishness? Oh my God, the criticism of Dave Chappelle is canceling him. Which one of you can take that money that man got from that Netflix special? Which one of us, anybody on this show, in this chat, who watches this eventually, which one of us can stop Dave Chappelle from getting another
But
contract
that's
on another show? What, and
but
as
that's
far
part
as
of the conflation that's going on, though.
it,
Like,
it is, and
it's
I
yeah.
feel
Go
like,
ahead.
it's so surface level that it bothers me that we don't, like, the very first thing that he said. Well, not the very first, and it's because people get emotional and they don't do their due diligence. Like, I didn't know who the hell DaBaby was. I did not. I'm just gonna be honest. I didn't know who. I honestly thought DaBaby was like a child, and so I did not know that DaBaby is a grown ass man that people are fine with calling DaBaby. And so Chappelle tells this story about, he tells this joke about, DaBaby shoots and kills someone in Walmart, and he conflates that, you can kill a black person because the person that DaBaby shot was black. You can kill a black person, but you can't hurt the feelings of people in the LGBTQ community. And not knowing who DaBaby was and not knowing this story caused me to go look it up. So what really happened was, because it seemed to me that Chappelle presented this as, DaBaby just goes into Walmart, wilds out, and just shoots a nigga, right? Because that's what he said. DaBaby shoots a nigga in Walmart. What actually happened was, according to all accounts, was that somebody approached this person, who I can't remember his actual name, but somebody approached this dude when he was shopping in Walmart with his family. Had his partner and his 2 young children with him. This person approaches this man with his family with a gun to rob him. And in self-defense, this person, whose stage name is DaBaby, shoots the person and kills them. The case against DaBaby was dropped. Does Chappelle say any of that? No. He just presents it as DaBaby just shoots a nigga and gets away with it, and conflates that with, well, you can't say anything mean and hurt the feelings of anybody in the LGBTQ community. And I felt like that was really crappy, the way he made that comparison, because they are not the same. And then it's like, okay, we may not like the way some powerful, politically connected folks respond when people say things that they use against especially black folks that they consider transphobic or homophobic. But when was the last time you saw a gang of gay people running around, trying to string up black people because they said mean things? That doesn't happen. So I felt I was like, okay, that I get the point he's trying to make, and I understand he's a comedian, but that was a shitty way to make the point.
I hear you, and I'm glad you raised the details of that case. And the only reason I know of DaBaby and that issue is because of students, and a couple of years ago, in particular with DaBaby, I had invited students to do a sort of an unscientific experiment. I said, for 2 weeks, I'll listen to commercial hip hop radio if for 2 weeks you listen to this playlist of hip hop that I've created for you. And in part of that, I heard a lot of DaBaby, and there were a couple of tracks I admit that I even enjoyed. At least it's, I don't know about the content, but at least the beat or whatever and I had to admit that. So that's where I knew of DaBaby from a couple of years ago. And I'm glad you raised that context. But this is, again, what I understood Chappelle to be doing was not, and this is why I think he would have been short-sighted on not mentioning Black trans in particular, and not clarifying, as you pointed out, the origins of MeToo. Because in his myopic focus, he's arguing with white people. And he's saying that, and he's putting it differently than I would put it, or any of us would put it. But one way I would have tried to raise the question, or do try to raise the question, is the LGBTQ plus community includes rich white people and rich white males, which changes the dynamic of that community's relationship, broadly speaking. And that's the point that I think he is trying to address, so by telling in a very narrow way that story about DaBaby killing a black man in the store versus making fun of gay folks. First of all, it wasn't just making fun of gay people. His commentary, DaBaby's commentary, was pretty vicious. I mean, the whole, you're all HIV and all that kind of stuff. Like,
but he also,
and even Chappelle had to acknowledge some of that.
Folks are like,
No question. But and Chappelle even acknowledged, like, I'm not co-signing everything DaBaby said. I just don't think he should be canceled and lose his income, his earning potential, which I think is part of this legitimate concern. Because again, as I'm seeing it happen in the public space, it is including the Netflix executive producer of Dear White People, an affluent white person, saying that these black people should be condemned, plug pulled, unable to earn a living. that's the concern that I think Dave is. So even going back to his previous sketch where he's saying, I can't say the F word as he was told by an executive because you're not gay. But then when he said, but I can say the N word, so then what are you saying about, so in other words, he keeps trying to raise with white people the contradictions of white people saying now some of us are part of a defined minority, oppressed minority group, and therefore have the same equal parallel experiences. And that's the criticism I see him. So I hear you and others, and I agree that there's short-sightedness when it comes to class. Certainly the specifics of the Black LGBTQ plus experience. But anyway, but I don't see it as him going at that community. That community, I see him going at white folks. So that's where.
Yeah, I
Anyway,
mean, he did try to make that clear that I'm talking about, and he did say, my problem isn't with the LGBTQ community, my problem is with white people. And okay, you can say that, but then when you make a point about having a problem with people making an issue or insisting that their pronouns be respected, then how do you make that just about white people, right? Because I mean, honestly, this was a conversation I had with Abdus, and this is like almost a generational thing where I've heard a lot of old folks, especially old Black people, honestly, who, especially those of us who grew up in the church, that we have a hard time. We're still trying to cleanse our minds of all of that serious homophobic religious indoctrination. Let's just be real. So, for those of you who don't know, Abdushahid Lukman, that won't the name that they gave him when he was born. So that's not the name that's on his birth certificate. The name that's on that brother's birth certificate is Michael Johnson. So he changed his name legally when he converted to Islam. And that name was given to him by his spiritual leader, or whatever. And in Islam, that's how it works. That's how it's supposed to work. You're supposed to be given your name, but a lot of folks don't do that. But he was given his name, so we're having this conversation long before the Chappelle thing, and I think it was after a meeting. And he's like, I just can't get this whole gender pronoun thing. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You can't get this whole gender pronoun thing. Abdushahid Lukman? What you talking about? You can't get it. Well, I just don't, it's just all this new thing. It's like, hold on. So you could change your whole damn name, and you expect people to call you Abdushahid or Abdus or AB if they can't pronounce it, but you can't figure out how to call somebody the pronoun that they choose. You've got to be kidding me. And he got that. And he understood that. And it was like, oh. So, I mean, he didn't have to make this whole, like, he didn't have to go study biology and science. And no, it's just like, what do you want people to call you? Okay, it's that simple. So why is this hard? So when he's making this point about it, oh, people with the gender pronouns, and I just don't understand what's the big deal. You don't have a problem calling a grown ass man DaBaby. And that's not his name, and that's not the name that he was given when he was born. But you are annoyed by people wanting to be called the pronoun that they choose. Come on, and I understand
but
that's
see
a
again,
joke.
I'll have to
Look,
go back. Sorry, go ahead.
no, and look, I understand that these are jokes. The problem is that people who have these biases take the jokes, miss the context that you're trying to raise, Jared, and never pay attention to the other things that other people are trying to raise, and just take the jokes as, see, Chappelle said that all of this LGBTQ, XYZ bullshit is bullshit. So you see what I'm saying? So, and finally, because I don't want to drag this out, because I do want to get to the Candyman thing, because that's so much more fun.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Oh, that's right.
And finally, the whole story at the end about and it's a terrible, terrible, tragic story about Daphne.
Hmm.
Um, the his transgender friend. I mean, it's interesting that he said his problem was with white people in these communities, but then he talks about this, his trans friend who really and I don't want to, this is really, she laughed at all of his trans jokes. She was a white trans lady who laughed at all of his trans jokes, and he used her as a, see, I'm not attacking trans people because I have a trans friend who laughed at my jokes. And you know what that sounds like to me? That sounds like a racist white person saying, these racist jokes aren't racist because I have a black friend and they laugh at them. So I really felt like that story at the end was just really, really messy. So I mean, this is just the way I saw some of the problems with some of the things that he said. I understand that he was trying to make a point about white people in these communities and using the marginalization of these communities against black people who they think transgress their community. I get that. I absolutely get that. But I don't like that people are missing the clear kind of class issues that he has. And it's not just that Dave Chappelle gets paid for what he does. It's that Dave Chappelle is like literally, almost literally gentrifying the town where he lives. And he's buying up a bunch of property. And because he's doing that, he's raising the property values. And a lot of people who are working class and poor are being pushed out of that community. And he knows this. Um, and I think that, yeah, I mean, if we're gonna, if we understand that everything in this society is political, if we understand that entertainment is political, then I don't see why people are all upset that people are critiquing the very political nature of some of the things that Dave Chappelle said. I just think people, I mean, I don't do it because I have a personal animus toward Dave Chappelle. It's just I see politics in everything. So I just don't see why people are all like emotional about.
No, I think you raised a lot of really important points. And the only thing that I would want to say quickly in response to any of that would be that, again, the reason that was when Dave says it was easier for Caitlyn Jenner to change her name than it was for Cassius Clay to
Yeah, that's true.
change her gender than it was for
Change her
Cassius Clay to
gender.
change his name.
I agree
That's
with
the
that.
point I'm getting at. And
Yes.
that's how I'm seeing him being critical of even the pronouns. Now, you're raising, I don't disagree with what you're saying. I'm just really, the only point I'm making is that, or wanting to make, is that I just want many of us at least to make sure that we're clear that a lot of the criticism we may even agree with is coming from spaces or from politics that we don't.
Hmm.
And I'll just leave it there because I think there's no, you've done it, you anyway.
Yeah, I mean,
You've offered up a great.
I just think it's wild that people like get emotionally invested in critiquing people who we have like no connection to. And honestly, if I never listen to or watch another Dave Chappelle special, he's still gonna own all that property in Yellow Springs. And the person who commented on our show about it said that the people in the town, they call the town now Chappello Springs, because that's how much property this dude has bought up in that joint. And a lot of people don't like it. A lot of working class and poor people don't like it. So I think that and this is just my perspective, Jared. I'm just gonna be honest. As a radical, as an anti-capitalist, as an anti-imperialist, as a socialist, yeah, I got problems with that. And I think that we would be foolish if I wouldn't be doing my job as any of those things if I didn't raise those points in the context of the statements he makes, right?
Now that's right
But
on.
but nobody else has to agree with that, and that's okay. That's
Well, they
okay.
would be foolish not to, though, Jackie. So,
Because
um,
we
You know,
roll deep over here in BPM.
that's
Don't
indeed we
play.
do. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.